I'm Superintendent Danny Atkins. I'm the new chair here for our Superintendent's Advisory Council. I'd like to thank all of our superintendents for joining us virtually today, and also thank the audience that are joining us through our media portal today. We know that we have several just general members of the public that like to watch this committee as well, or this council. We have several new superintendents since the last meeting. I'd like to call them by name and just thank them, and just everybody give them a nice welcome here. I have Superintendent Abel from Spencer County, Superintendent Buchanan from Nicholas County, Superintendent Barkley from Pendleton County, Superintendent Radford from Oldham County, Superintendent Spencer from Menifee County, Superintendent Thorpe from Trigg County, Superintendent Tuck from Butler County, and Superintendent Whalen from Dawson Springs Independent. Real quick, I just want to thank you guys for showing your confidence in me to allow me to be your new chair for this council. I feel like together we'll have some great conversation and hopefully address many of the issues that we all know are out there. And I know today we have a great agenda that and that was submitted by most of you for questions. So we're kind of excited to get into this right now. For everyone joining us remotely, which is everyone right now, please ensure that your video is streaming and that you're visible during the duration of the meeting. Your microphone should be muted when you're not speaking. However, all discussions must be broadcast to the public, so make certain your mic is unmuted when speaking. At this point, I'm going to ask Commissioner Glass if he has anything he'd like to add.
No, Chair Atkins, thank you. I just wanted to listen in. I saw the agenda and I had a little time on my calendar and wanted to hear the conversation. So thanks for letting me be part of it.
Absolutely, always welcome, and excited to have a chance to work with you as well. Right now, I'm going to turn to Mrs. Stein for roll call.
Thank you, Chair Atkins. Superintendents, as we move through roll call, please make certain that your camera is enabled and that you unmute when your name is called. Superintendent Chuck Abel.
Present.
Danny Atkins.
Present.
Carrie Ballinger.
Present.
Doug Buchanan.
Present.
Doug Bennett.
Present. Sorry, camera's not working.
That's okay. Thank you. Joe Berkeley.
Present.
Tom Cochran.
Present.
Matthew Constant.
Present.
Robbie Fletcher.
Present.
Michael Ford. David Gilliam. Sanford Holbrook. Damian Johnson.
Present.
Mark Kopp.
Present.
Matthew Matting. Misty Middleton.
Present.
Marty Polio. Jason Radford. Patrick Richardson. Wayne Roberts.
Present.
Thank you. Tim Spencer.
Present.
Bill Thorpe. Robert Tuck. Henry Webb.
Present.
And Leonard Wellen.
Here.
Thank you, Superintendent. Chair Atkins. That concludes roll call.
Thank you, Mrs. Stein. Next on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from the May meeting. If you'll recall, we received an email with those attached. We will also drop them in the chat box for review if anyone needs to see those. So I guess I'm assuming we need a motion to accept the minutes from the May meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that. Tom Cochran, Johnson County.
Thank you, gentlemen. So that with the minutes approved, that brings us to our first presentations of the day. And as I said, I feel like we've got a really good agenda today. Things that we've all kind of, we pass around amongst ourselves as what would this be? What's this look like? That type of thing. So right now, we have Mr. Che Ritter, the Director of the Division of District Support. to talk about the rising costs of construction in 2023 and 24 funding. Are you with us, Mr. Ritter?
I am Chair Atkins. How is everybody today?
Everybody's great. And I will say that's one thing you can count on is Mr. Ritter will always be available.
I am available. If that's one thing I am, is available. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this group. As I've talked to many of you over the years, particularly lately, a topic that should not surprise anybody is the increased cost of construction. Nothing I'm going to tell you today will be shocking. I don't expect to see people fall out of their chairs or anything when I speak. But where this started, I think, was a conversation between superintendents and legislators, and the concerns, and rightfully so, that the cost of trying to finish a facility and the decisions the local boards are making were really being, I think, pinched by increased cost. So decisions are being made to either reduce scope of projects, delay, put it on the shelf, what have you. And conveniently, I'm going to pick on some of you all today because we have some real live examples, unfortunately, of where, the cost really skyrocketed in the last couple of years. So I had to actually speak at the Capital Planning Advisory Board across the river at the General Assembly. And this is not your usual group of people. This is some legislators and citizens. When the last time I spoke to him, I kind of looked around the room. The state budget director's in there, a few agency heads from the executive branch, I think 3 legislators, I believe, if I remember correctly, and a lawyer from a private firm, a large private firm. So it's really a mixed group. But I think the reason the conversation started with this group is the co-chair had been hearing about the increased cost. And, obviously right now is a good time for them to gather information. And of course, with this information, we're always hopeful that they use it for, looking at the way things are working out in the districts. And if they can throw additional funding into it, so much the better for all of us. So we're happy to get the opportunity to speak to them as well. So with that, right in front of you, basically, this is the condensed version of a presentation I gave to the Capital Planning Advisory Board. Of course, one reason I wanted to do a condensed version is that I know all you all are familiar with a lot of the funding mechanisms, nickels. One thing this group wanted to see, interestingly, was districts with multiple nickels. Beyond the statutorily required facility support program nickel, they wanted to see districts that had additional nickels but still had trouble, finishing up projects. In other words, you're putting in a whole bunch of local effort and still not able to hit your facility goals, because I think that's obviously a concern. State equalization was something we talked to them about. Now, this is a formula-driven thing, and there's a ways to tweak it to throw more state money towards these issues, but that also gets across the board to almost every district. Quite a few don't get equalized because of their property wealth. But the majority of districts do get equalization from the state on either FSPK or Tier 1, things like that. Of course, our friends at the School Facilities Construction Commission are a huge player in this as well. The regular offers of assistance that you pick up every 2 years. And then in the budget bill, there's usually the special offers of assistance. And, that list is different than what we worked on. And of course, depending on the General Assembly's, I guess, feel that year, they may want to do old facilities. They may want to catch up and help, single system schools. They could use any criteria imaginable to come up with that list. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. Natasha, you can jump to the next slide, please. So of course, with financing, very quick and dirty. You all are obviously issuing bonds to pay for a lot of these projects or paying cash. Obviously, back in the day, anecdotally, an elementary school, if it got up to 25 million, that's pretty expensive now. That would probably not build you the lobby. So a lot of these issues get into your bonding capacity. And depending on where you are in the life cycle, and I'm going to pick on my friends at Franklin County, they replaced what I hate to call my old elementary school, because that implies I'm old, with a new school. So borrowed, issued some bonds to build this new, beautiful Collins Lane Elementary. Very proud of that school. But that is now, sort of like everything else in life, on their books for the, next umpteen years. And they've got some other projects they put up years ago, Peaks Mill Elementary. So it's kind of a life cycle of facilities. And if you're a district of one facility, like an independent or even 2 or 3, a pretty small district, that life cycle can seem like an awful long time when you don't have the tax base that's, overwhelmingly sending you tons of funds. So, we always caution legislators with understand your districts because every district's got a very different situation. The life cycle of these bonds can be very different too. You may be coming off of some debt service, or you may have just added some a couple of years ago, so that becomes important. Of course, you work with your fiscal agents to determine this bonding capacity. Interest rates can really, throw a monkey wrench at this, as well as, credit ratings and existing debt service. The part I think they were most interested in is no matter what you all tried to do, kind of by hook and by crook, you still have a gap in funding. So decisions have to be made. Do we phase it in? And do we reduce the project down to something we don't quite want? And it's this to me is the really hard conversation to either contemplate or actually have with board members or even have with the public, because a lot of people put a lot of their weight into these projects and they really want these things to happen in a way that's good for everybody. It's a school you can be proud of. You didn't have to cut anything out. All the programs are there, but of course, all that has, some additional cost. Natasha, you can jump to the next one. Thank you. So of course, we talk about K-Fix. You all are familiar with this, but this was another product of understanding more about your inventory of your buildings and age, all the components, the large components anyway, and using this to your advantage. Age and condition, of course, and the kind of that inventory of space inside the building to understand what you have, what you need, what you want. Those are very different parts of the equation. And so we educated this group a little bit on that. We kind of stayed at the higher level on that, of course. And you can go to the next slide, Natasha. So then 678 comes into play. And of course, the whole, I think, reasoning behind this bill really was actually a few reasons, but the big one was to speed things up, to accelerate, because someone in their infinite wisdom realized that if we can move these projects quicker, perhaps that can save some money. Now, we can't predict stock markets. We can't predict the construction market for sure. But if you can, accelerate approvals, and maybe that can save a district some money, or getting materials quicker, or getting the project started sooner. And of course, time is everything to everybody, and time is quite literally money in the construction business, I'm sure. And as of probably today, I think we're over 140 districts now operate under House Bill 678. It'd probably take me another year to update this one slide, but this has been sort of the, I guess the gasoline behind the fire a little bit on these projects too. And we're happy to see that, hopefully this has helped districts accelerate their starts, maybe even some finishes as well. So that's, hopefully we'll go over well with the General Assembly in the next session too. You can go to the next slide. So one thing we wanted to look at, just at kind of a national level, and I'm not an economist, but I can read a chart, and this one's pretty simple. The Federal Reserve basically tracks new school building construction cost, and as you can see, going back, quite a ways, I think 2006, we see, fairly significant increase. But more recently, you see, if you go to the next slide, Natasha, we narrowed that down to a more recent period. And, again, this doesn't shock anybody. You all are living in this. You see it in the housing market. You see it kind of across the board. And I would bet if we overlaid any type of construction on top of this, it would look about the same. But this is specific to new school building construction. And we use this a little bit just to kind of figure out, as far as Kentucky's concerned, are we seeing the same thing, here in Kentucky as we are across the nation? The answer is easily yes in this case. So next, Natasha, if you would move, we've got some examples. I know some of these folks are sitting on this call, so if you have questions, we can get answers, is the good news. So we reached out to quite a few districts to ask some very, basic questions, like how's this impacted you? And in Menifee County, initial estimates came in on their board office, and I'm pretty familiar with Menifee. We've dealt with them over the years quite a bit. And, years ago, they really had not approached a lot of their facility needs. They hustled and got the nickel. And, like a lot of districts, that's not an easy road. And, kudos to them. And then they get ready to go. And of course, best laid plans of mice and men. They want to do a central office, which went from about 2 to 2.5 to 3.5 million. And so they ended up removing some of the project to save some money on that project. So, again, that cost just got really beyond their control by no fault of their own. And, again, time is money. If they had had that nickel 10 years ago, what would this look like? So there's always these, second guessing, but really this is a perfect example of what we were talking about. Natasha, you can jump to the next one. Round County, I happened to talk to Glenn Teeger down there about, they've Rodburn Elementary, 5.5, and it was revised not much later, months later to 6.2. And I did this, I think, back in July, so I haven't even followed up with him again to see if it's changed yet again. And when I'm reviewing the BGs that come in and I see revised estimates, we see, quite a bit of this. These are a sample of a lot of projects we've seen with the same story. Natasha, you can go to the next one. This one is one of our just, kind of glaring examples. Christian County, we were in the very beginning of this when they started talking about consolidating. Of course, we're talking to Christian County quite a bit. And, they tried to pass a nickel several years ago and it failed. And, they started this consolidation project, pretty big consolidation of two, pretty good sized high schools. So about 107 million, 117, which, you think of that's in context isn't too bad. And then it jumps up to 137. And depending on scope and all the other decisions made, it can obviously, creep higher. And this is a district, a healthy sized district that probably hasn't lost a whole lot of students, probably gained, if anything. So, that obviously brings concerns. And last, but certainly not least to this example, Woodford County, right next door to me, going back a couple years, July 19, the word got out that they're looking at building a new high school, attempted to do the nickel. It did not pass. And they were looking at about $36 million. And, over time, they had, I think, many discussions on how to pay for the high school. If the nickel falls off the table, how are we going to pay for this? 3 years later, bids came in at $73 million. So that changes the whole perspective of, obviously, the decisions you make. And of course, hindsight being what it is, what if they'd gotten the nickel? What would that have saved the community and things like that? So again, I've talked to many of you about adopting nickels, and some of you all have been successful, some not, and some haven't tried it yet. But this is one of those things that we really try to drive home as far as a message that, getting this nickel now, maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I know Franklin County's had one for quite a long time, and many districts have. Does that save a county, district, or an independent money? It can very well, because that money will be used to build a facility. Of course, we can't predict the housing market. We can't predict the new school construction market as well. Natasha, you can jump to the next one. So really the issues are pretty, common sense. The construction costs may exceed your bonding potential and in a hurry. We've talked to some architects, we've talked to some construction companies. By region, there may be some differences, but generally speaking, it's up everywhere. Your mileage may vary. Not all projects are going to fall into this, bucket of cost just exceeded. It depends on material, labor. Labor market is extremely tight right now. We were just having that discussion this morning. And, even districts that are just really putting in local effort. I've got some that have, 3 nickels, and yet still, building is expensive to them too. So decision points, your board may reduce the scope, phase ins. Now, the question is, if you do a phase in, does it get more expensive years from now? We don't know, and it very well likely could. So that's, a slippery slope, I think. Natasha, you can jump to the next one if we have one.
That one's it. for you.
Okay, so I believe I also sent there's a spreadsheet that may have been sent. Thank you, Natasha. I didn't know if you had a slide or not. And basically what this is that the Capital Planning Advisory Board asked us to put together a list, multiple nickels. They had all this criteria they wanted us to look at. We sent out a survey to ask a bunch of questions. You may have received it. But out of about 122, our list came down to the ones you see. They really wanted to see active projects if they exceeded the bonding capacity of the district. And this may be further whittled down a little more. We're kind of talking to them. They're wanting to discuss some of these again. And I think the hope is, and I'm going to sort of speak on behalf of people I probably shouldn't, but I think the hope is that as session gets closer, they can start to communicate that, some of these projects, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody in particular, but I'll say Johnson County, they're ready to go, or going rather, and there's this gap. And, to address that obviously takes, quite a bit of money. I know one on here, Rockcastle County, smaller scale, it's a middle school, but it's also got a gap. And, these gaps are significant enough that it's, you might change your flooring, but that's not going to cut it. These are, gaps are significant where, finishes and things like that really aren't going to make up enough ground. So hopeful as always and optimistic that this educates as well as kind of enlightens the General Assembly to the extent possible that, hey, these projects are out there. These are in their communities, and, they're kind of spinning their wheels, if you will. That they'd really, filling in these gaps would be a really wonderful thing for these schools, let you all finish these projects. And, as we look at these projects and we look at, age of buildings and what districts are doing, every one of these is a good project. There's not one in here that, we could obviously say, well, it's not really needed. All these are, have long since been planned many years ago, and it's just the cost got too expensive in a hurry. So I'll be glad, Chair, to take any questions if I can.
Okay, real quick, Mr. Ritter, I have a question. Could you share that spreadsheet with us, because I didn't see it. I don't know.
Yes.
Chair Atkins,
Okay.
I have those materials and I will pass those along to the members. Just as soon as we get off this call, I will send those out to everyone.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Ms. Stein. Floor is open, guys, for questions, feedback of any sort. We're ready to listen.
Shay, this is Lenny Whalen, Dawson Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Shay, do you get the feeling that they may take some action on this? Is that the way they seem to be leaning to put some funds into this?
Well, and that's the funny thing. We typically do not deal with this group at all. And so this was kind of I don't want to say I was shocked, but I was sort of confused when they asked me to speak, because I had to look up to see who it was, because we're usually in front of education subcommittees and appropriations and revenue committees. I don't quite know where this goes. From talking with one of the co-chairs, I could tell he's very interested in getting this information in front of the other members of the General Assembly, which is a really, really good thing. That to me is half the battle, is sort of educating them, no pun intended, on this gap, and showing them what the problems that you all are having to contend with out there. That's where I'm hopeful that will get in front of some good eyes. And of course, when we head into, I'm not sure it will happen in this session. Obviously, it's not a budget session. It's hard to predict what happens. But as well, it's sometimes the message has to, keep going in session after session. And then all of a sudden, kind of like transportation funding, we pushed that for many, many years. And finally, in full kindergarten, it took a long time. So I think any opportunity we get to get the message over there is a good opportunity. So hard to tell where this ends up, though, because this is a very different group. So it's kind of a wait and see. And of course, we're kind of at their beck and call as usual. If they need information, we'll get it to them.
If I may, Chair Atkins, Dr. Fletcher, Superintendent, Lawrence County Schools.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ritter, one of the things that I've talked to you about a little bit is I know that a lot of times, well, almost every single opportunity, that when you talk to legislators, they want to know if you have the nickel tax. And I understand a lot of these groups that are about to embark upon building new schools have the nickel tax. In Lawrence County, we do have a unique situation in that we applied for the local area vocational center grant, and we received it for $9.28 million. So my request to you is, even though they may be requesting only those districts that have a nickel tax about ready for projects, I don't know how many others that are in the LAVEC that do not have the nickel tax, but I would ask that you would also include Lawrence County in that to them, because again, we don't have it. And if you look at the $9.28 million that we did receive, we're very thankful for, but that's not going to near cover what we had put into our grant originally. So again, if there's any discussion like that, we would appreciate if you include that information about Lawrence County, please.
Absolutely. And they did after the last meeting, talk to me a bit about LAVEX and getting, I think that, kind of more information about those. And I know that's a different funding stream in the last go around in our, I think, budget bill, if I remember correctly. So again, it's an education thing to, say, here's Lawrence County situation. And I always tell them every district has a very different story. I'm more familiar with Woodford County just in my interactions with them over the last couple of years. But, that same story, it will sound a little different in Lawrence County, but it's a need regardless. And it's the kind of need that, wherever you are in the state, I think almost every district has that need somewhere, and especially with the construction costs being what they are. But we most certainly, Superintendent Fletcher will take that to heart to make sure we communicate that to him.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chair, this is Henry Wells, Superintendent Kenton County. Thanks for the presentation. It's great information. I would just also add to a little bit of what Robbie said. Districts like ours, who we have 3 nickels, and as you know, through our Scott project, we even though it wasn't a new facility, we're spending about $55 million on that project, and it went up about $15 million on us while we were trying to get it moving. So my question would be that we also, even though we've got some bonding potential here, we're having to make decisions too on leaving schools out, cutting scope out of projects because we don't have enough bonding potential to do everything we need to do. So I appreciate some of the school districts and encourage them to try to seek funding if they have the nickel or don't have the nickel. But just because a district has 3 nickels and has some bonding potential, we're also having to make decisions to leave schools out or reduce scope of work because we only have so much bonding potential as well. So I'm not opposed to legislative funding to complete gaps, as we say, to build these new schools. But I think we also have to be equitable in looking at school districts that's having to leave things out because they can't do what they need to do for kids, even if they do have bonding potential. Thanks.
Superintendent Polio, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ritter. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say that I think it's important to note as well that the legislature has made it harder for districts to have a local nickel tax over the past couple of years. So when they say, in a way, almost holding accountable local school districts, have you passed the nickel, it is now harder for a district to pass a nickel tax, or at least not have it go to a vote referendum, mostly because of Jefferson County and us passing one a couple of years back. So I think it's important that the legislature knows that.
Duly noted.
Thank you,
And to put a
Polio.
little bit, to put a little icing on this cake, hopefully, I do think this always brings up the conversation about the dime and, where we're at economically speaking. And to, Superintendent Webb's point, some of our districts and, Kenton, Oldham, there's quite a few now, Scott, it's a very building fund heavy district, except they have a lot of buildings and they have growth over the years, and there's this need for these buildings. And then you have districts on the other end of the spectrum that are still unable to get the recallable nickel, which obviously to Superintendent Polio's point, for some it's been harder. And even in districts, I know Fayette just proposed to do one recently, and the petition's already been ramped up against them pretty quickly, and it'll be electronic, which is a lot easier, obviously, too. So I think the dynamics have changed quite a bit. And since I've been employed at KDE since 2007, this conversation about a dime instead of a nickel has floated around for quite some time. So, maybe it's time to revisit that again. And that's something I think that's always on the table as we talk about this.
Superintendent Constant, so you have a hand raised as well.
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ritter, for the presentation. Very good. I just wonder if, and nobody probably has the answer to this, but other states in funding school construction, I mean, have we looked at what other states do in terms of how they fund? I'm just one of those geeks that when I go on vacation, I look at school buildings. And it just seems when I look at school buildings in other states that I go in, I mean, they look from the outside much better than my own school district, So
I will not confirm or deny I've received trespass warnings at Indiana schools as I cross the border, but that is something we look at pretty frequently. We want to know, and I'm like you, I'm always curious. Neighboring states, and even we've spoken actually in Nevada not terribly long ago. They called us about free lunch students, and I wouldn't give them answers until they told me about their school facilities and how they fund them. I think it's something collectively that is there a better way is always, I think, important. Money is always the issue. It's a finite resource, but I also think understanding the dynamics of our state, where we have urban areas, you have rural areas. Again, this gets in such a big conversation about equity, about does SEEK still, reach these goals that we all want? And we could argue for a while on that, not to get that conversation started today. But it's always worth looking at other states too. And two, one thing I think educating about need, Jefferson County, which, passed the tax rate, went through the court system, was ultimately successful. If that tax had not passed, their need would have been over $1 billion. That's with a B. And I deal with big numbers every day, and that's still a big number in my book. And I think about as I drive around Jefferson County and I see a building that's, a little aged, not in bad shape. And Superintendent Polio could speak to this 1,000 times better than I can, but I don't believe they had built a new school in quite some time in the district. Land isn't just sitting around up there, and I'm sure it isn't now. And so every district has a totally different dynamic to deal with every day. And so I think you bring up a good point, is looking to see what works in other states and what can work for Jefferson, Augusta, Dawson Springs, and Mayfield, and Pike County. Something, I don't know if there's the same rules can apply to everybody, but certainly if we can get better tools to help everybody, reach these facility goals, because otherwise we're just kind of spinning our wheels. So. Yeah, and Superintendent Webb mentioned the cost of property is also, it's significantly increased.
Guys, do we have any further questions for Mr. Ritter? Any further discussion? Well, Che, we certainly want to thank you for coming on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Chairman Atkins, Tim Spencer from Menifee. Che, once again, appreciate the presentation. Has there been any thoughts, especially like for smaller districts? I know it's typically not heard of and so forth, but with our facilities needs, we're starting to get into some of the discretionary projects, and we've been very blessed with community here passing. We've got 2 nickels, just passed another one last month, but being able to utilize some state equalization money for something such as athletic fields or things of that nature, instead of just having to utilize local money, whereas a smaller district like Menifee would have a hard time generating that.
Right. So I think House Bill 678 really brings a lot of that to a boil. There's some different rules now with House Bill 678, which passed in the last regular session, not special session, but the last regular one. And I think that opens your opportunities up quite a bit. And I think it can cause you to, and Superintendent Webb there, that legislation will allow you to access those funds for discretionary. So you can kind of look at your DFP in a little bit different manner than we used to. And I'll be glad if anyone, hasn't really looked too deeply into that or wants to look at it, email me. We'll set up a time to kind of go through the ins and outs of that bills and what you can and can't do. But it's a 2-page bill with a significant impact on everybody that, if your board adopted it. If they haven't adopted it, you still, have the same rules. But I think, you know, the 678 is only good for a 2-year period, and I would assume that the General Assembly, the sponsor is no, he got voted out. I don't think because House Bill 678, but he's out. But they may, in fact, someone else may pick it up to renew it, to make it permanent. And there may, you know, we may have an opportunity to tweak some of it as well. I think the bill was, you know, it was there to help accelerate these projects, which I think it was successful in doing that. But there's some tweaks I think we can make, and with input from districts too, to make it a really strong bill for everybody, to help, you know, to benefit districts as well. So, but at any time, as always, if you have questions about that bill or anything else with facilities, you know, let me know. We're glad to set up a time to talk.
We have Superintendent Berkeley with his hand up as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ritter, just a quick question, and you touched on it briefly there with House Bill 678, but many of the funds districts now have also have deadlines included with them. So due to the rising cost and the need to phase in projects, has there been any discussion around extending any of these deadlines?
So with ESSER funds, we don't control the deadlines, and I'm not aware of any discussions going on to extend those deadlines. So we are acutely aware of those deadlines because they make us nervous with especially construction projects. And the rules behind ESSER funds are, you know, complex, especially when you get into construction. So it's probably good to have a plan B, and it's probably good to communicate with us as well if you start to get a little sweat because the deadline is fast approaching. You're not sure if you can get material and labor and all that moving. In some cases, you know, I know a lot of districts are using ESSER for HVAC work, which all of a sudden, if everyone's looking for HVAC companies, there may not be enough to go around, so it could delay your project. So if that is a concern, strongly recommend reaching out to me. We'll set up a time to look at a calendar and, you know, kind of figure out what things look like and keep an eye on it. And good question. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Chair Atkins,
Yes, sir.
Lenny Whalen, Dawson Springs. I don't have another question. I appreciate your input, Jay, but I wanted to let you know Bill Thorpe reached out to me and he's listening on the line. I don't know if you guys can see him there, but Bill Thorpe is on the call, but I'm not sure that you guys can see him or he can speak.
Thank you, Superintendent Whalen, for letting us know that. Sure. So if we have no further discussion with Mr. Ritter or feedback, then we certainly want to thank him and, you know, for everything he does. He's always available. Like I said, anytime I need a call, and we're constantly calling, seems like, from Woodford County for a little backup over here. So we certainly appreciate you, Mr. Ritter, and glad to have you on the call today.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
With that being said, the next presenter on our agenda is Dr. Byron Darnall. He's Associate Commissioner of the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness, and he'll be talking to us today about our EPSB overview, outlook, and projection of fully certified teachers. Dr. Darnall, are you on here with us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, superintendents, for the opportunity to just share a little bit of information, and most importantly, my gratitude to each of you all in the services that you provide your communities and most importantly, your students. It is another set of wicked problems. Unfortunately, we live in this world constantly, as the information presented by Mr. Ritter as well, but also want to thank Natasha for manning the slides. But the first one here, just humor me just for a moment. If you read just these quick quotes and just looking through research and just constantly pouring through literature nationally, internationally, but came across a couple here. And the interesting part of this is the first quote was written in a publication from 1943. And the second quote comes from a publication written in 1963. And we certainly have had a consistent amount of work to do in elevating, promoting, and protecting our profession. And sadly, we are in extremely exacerbated times as well. So it is certainly not a new problem, but it continues to escalate, if you will. If Natasha, you go to the next slide there. So I just have just some numbers on student teaching placements over the last 5 years. So student teaching participation by year from 2017 to spring of 2022. So I wish this graph were inverted, but it gives you a little perspective on just the placements that our EPPs have submitted to us. And as we can see, the graph is unfortunately not going in the direction we would prefer, and definitely precipitously declining over this 5-year trend. If you go to the next one as well. So this just divvies up by spring and fall. Naturally, we see most placements occurring during the spring semester, but it just equates to the numbers in terms of the individuals doing their student teaching within a fall placement and or a spring placement. And then if you go to the next slide, this just gives you kind of a breakdown of student teaching placements by region and by educator provider. So just to sort of give a holistic perspective of the state by numbers and percentages, it gives you just a little bit of a landscape in terms of where we are in the placement of the student teaching pipeline for the last 5 years. So again, I wish that we could be reporting more significant increases, but I hope it provides a little bit of perspective just kind of on the current take and how we have arrived today compared to where we were 5 years ago. If you would go to the next slide. So certainly we have, well, now we have 9 pathways to become a certified teacher in Kentucky, and certainly we have an obligation to explore all options and make sure that we are being innovative and that we are working to be, to question rather, the things that are in existence and whether or not we are allowing individuals to enter the profession. But it's important to kind of give a perspective of just the alternate pathways, if you will. So this also breaks down and gives you just raw numbers of certifications by option per 16 to 2021, and then an aggregate number. So the most important, I guess, and option 9 not being in motion yet, so not included on this, but the total certifications from the optional pathways, you're looking at 8,463. And so just for a holistic view, we have approximately 42,626 certified teachers in the state of Kentucky. And so when you look at just the numbers that we have matriculating through these alternate pathways, it does present a rather small percentage of our overall educator workforce. If you go to the next slide. So this comes from some information shared in June with the Interim Joint Committee, and it just gives a perspective of total emergency certified teachers. So from 2016 to 2022, the number of emergency certificates that were awarded to individuals and districts. And of course, the disappointing one being 2022, where it skyrockets significantly above sort of, at least a rather marginal trend, with the exception of the 2021 school year, which most of that data is suppressed. And that was, of course, also the time when most schools were not in person. So we do have a significant concern just about the number of positions that are being filled by individuals who may very well be outstanding, but are not, prepared in a way that we are used to in terms of going into a classroom and being able to deliver that content with correct supports. If you go to the next slide. So a few things just to point out and put on your radar. Another sort of sad notion is we do not have a statewide mentor and induction program any longer, with KTIP not being active at this time. So it also begs a larger question of that need, and certainly an important need that we talk about consistently, especially in terms of retention and focusing on, heard the phrase, retention is the new recruitment, and maintaining and supporting continuing educators so that they don't hit the proverbial wall within that 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 year period. But there is an opportunity out now with National Board to, they will select 100 early career educators, and this is from years 1 and 3. So we are the only state that they are piloting this with, and the application period is open currently, and it will be fully, the expenses for the National Board process will be covered by this grant and through National Board's pilot that we're working with. So excited to offer an opportunity to teachers across Kentucky and our early career teachers and or brand new teachers. And certainly as you have individuals that you think fit the criteria and you see that promise, certainly encourage you to help them and or have them apply for this particular opportunity that will take place over the next 2 years. Very important to note that this is an elongated process. It is not the traditional 1 year and or 9 month process that we are used to. So knowing that these are early career teachers, it is spread over a 2 year period, doing one component at a time. And they will also have coaching and mentor support, just like they do in the normal program. So they will have the access to the MBCT network as well as an MBCT mentor also. Next slide. So here's just an overlay of the process, and certainly here we are. What is it? It's Earth, Wind, and Fire Day, I think. It's September 21st arrives, and the application is currently open. Certainly, Jocelyn Waddle is the contact for us, and if anyone needs any assistance in this at all, please reach out to me. We'll connect you with her, and she is a great champion for this network and this opportunity. If you click one more. So there will be very shortly new teacher support funds that will be 2.8 million shared amongst the 8 co-ops. And this is being finalized now through finance and the routing. So excited to share that co-ops and educator prep providers are collaborating to serve new teachers. So please be aware in your region that these funds are being distributed across the state, and an opportunity to tap into them for support with your new educators. And this doesn't solely pertain just to first year teachers. So we're looking at supporting new to the profession teachers. So if I can just provide that as a clarification as well. So it broadens the scope of the need, which I know exists greatly. If you click on the next one. Also want to report to you all that we, in the special session from 21, the legislators did offer a B option for those that are eligible to be substitutes within districts, and the B option added that they could have a high school diploma and have 4 years of relevant educational experience. And just based on anecdotal evidence and conversations, this really helped assist a lot of districts. And so the bill, or that bill, sunset in June of 30th, and it wasn't mentioned in the House Bill 277 that also brought forth the option 9. In House Bill 277, it allowed for another renewal for an emergency certified teacher. The confusing part in the language is that emergency certified teacher and emergency certified sub are defined as two separate categories. However, in consultation at the department, we are reopening the opportunity for districts to rehire any subs or substitutes that fell into that category prior. So if you had individuals that you were employing as substitutes last year under the expanded option for the criteria, you may employ them again for this year. Now, I know this is still in the stopgap phase, and we would like to see a permanent fix to this option, and we are certainly in conversation and dialogue to bring about some support for this. But at least for this year, it will provide you the opportunity to employ and or re-employ those individuals that were serving in this capacity last year as well. So happy and hopeful that this will broaden some of the substitute pools that I know are desperately needed. And Natasha, is there another one coming in there?
That's it. That's
Okay. I thought so. Good. So, I hope this, it's just an overview. It's a snapshot, a little perspective as far as, our teacher pipeline and looking where we ended in 2022, particularly with our traditional programs. And still the bulk of our educator workforce come from the traditional prep programs, and as seen in the numbers for the alternate pathways as well, working hard to support those and make them viable for individuals that can enter the profession, but also cognizant of the impact that we need from just the traditional pathway that supplies the majority of our educator workforce. So, Chair Adkins, it's a overview flyby, but I hope it provides just a little bit of perspective.
Absolutely. We'll open the floor for any discussion or questions that we have for Dr. Darnall. If anyone has anything. If not, then we'll certainly thank him for coming on board today and giving us this update and a quick overview of where we're at and where we're looking at. So thank you very much, Dr. Darnall.
I think Superintendent Thorpe may have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just
yes, that's
ineffectiveness on technology, but I think I've got it figured out now. I want to Dr. Darnall. He and I had a conversation about the substitutes. This, at least for my district, which is a relatively small district, this really helps, and I appreciate the look there. And we can get those people. I assume that starts effective now.
Yes, and I will. I need to make sure that communications, we have sort of a written up explanation and a little bit of a how-to. It's going to be the same in the system, but yes, I'm working with that, so they'll get that out to all superintendents. But I appreciate you bringing this topic to me as well, Superintendent Thorpe.
Thank you.
Chair Atkins, Michael Ford in Russell County, if I may ask a question real quick.
Yes, sir.
The 2.8 million that's going to the co-ops, we currently in Russell County partner with some institutions of higher ed to support our new teachers, and then we pay stipends to our teachers to serve as mentors as well. Do we know yet what that's going to look like through the co-ops? Is that going to be mentoring, training for teachers, or is that still in development?
No, most of they had to submit a plan. So naturally, each co-op and it is a collaborative with the educator prep providers. So also just know that this is meant to be in collaboration with the work that is taking place in your area. But we wanted to also give flexibility and not be so prescriptive, given that there are similar yet different supports that are taking place. And just given the nature of this, the ESSER funds and the timelines, we wanted to give the flexibility to be able to support work that is beyond or already taking place within your district. So absolutely, it hopefully will be of great benefit to your district as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Constant.
Hi, Byron. Thanks for your presentation. Just a question and something that came up in our discussion at GREC last time. We were talking with Dean Murphy at WKU. Is there any discussion on the EPSB level about opening up and widening certification grade spans, areas, things like that, where we're all getting caught in that very specific role, certification area, grade level, where we have, it looks like a very qualified person, but we're being constrained by their prep program and what they initially went into?
No, yes, sir, and thank you. That's an excellent question. The short answer is yes, and of course, naturally, this will be contingent upon the board taking action. But the conversations have been initiated, and we are definitely relaying the complications that come with how the grade spans are allotted currently. Sitting in the principal's role, I definitely know how frustrating that can be too at times, and especially when you have a great candidate that you want, but they're either topped out or bottomed out. So yes, we are definitely engaged and aware of the expression of need in terms of looking at this and presenting potential options for consideration.
Sir, Dr. Webb, I think has his hand raised next.
Yes, thanks, Danny. Just to follow up to great question, Matt. While you're looking at that, could we also, if you're not already, I think we have 7 or 8 states that border our state, and where we are, we get a lot of educators from other states, vice versa. Can we look at allowing some additional flexibility with reciprocal agreements on teaching certification? Because sometimes. Yeah, sometimes they come over here and we want to require them to take a bunch of classes to do the same thing they've been doing for 8 years. So that would be very helpful.
No, absolutely. Completely respect that point. And again, appreciate you bringing it up. Most certainly. I mean, we have to. We need to make sure we are trying to support any opportunities. So one of it was listed in the pathways. I think a good opening for people is the proficiency route now too, which allows prior coursework at another institution to be honored by one of our institutions, which can, of course, verify and recommend for the licensing. We are also working on or partnering in the development of an interstate compact that is national reciprocity agreement, and have been in that conversation. I'm close to a final product. It's been in the process for over a year. Naturally, this still will be up to the individual states to sign on and commit to it, but we have been actively involved in this, and we're hopeful that other states as well will also be involved to help some of that mobility concern that is out there. But yes, absolutely.
Two great questions, guys. Right now we have Superintendent Buchanan with his hand raised.
Thank you, Byron. Just real quick question to kind of piggyback on the last two as well. Any kind of discussion concerning flexibility on the grade point requirements for some of these additional optional?
So I'm glad you bring that up. One thing that I'm hopeful for with, of course, the Educational Professional Standards Board, the individuals are largely practitioners, and of course their time's very valuable, and sort of convening is it's difficult because of schedules and responsibilities. But what we are going to do in the next 2 meetings, which will be coming up October 10th, and then in December, we are having work sessions on the afternoon before the meeting to be able to present this information, concerns, and options for them to sort of digest, so that within the confines of the meeting, it is hard and difficult with all of the business that just has to be done, and of course that works the same with your all's boards as well. But this is a topic that is on the list of those conversations to have with board members, and primarily present them with the data, and then present them with options to consider that might provide a better pathway for some of these obstacles.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, Chair Atkins, please just know I'm at your all's disposal. Just if you email me, just note that it's DARNALL. That happens a lot. It gets the ELL and it gets kicked back, and I know it's phonetically frustrating for me too. But please just know any time, okay, and any ideas, and more than willing to field them and work toward them and take your feedback, which is extremely important to me as well as EPSB and the Office of Educator Licensure.
Dr. Darnell, we certainly want to thank you, and we've had some great conversations surrounding this, and it's a burning topic amongst all educators right now as to what can we do, how can we solve this issue. So thank you very much for your input and just kind of catching us up to speed as to what EPSB is thinking. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity.
Next on our agenda, we have Mrs. Christy Biggerstaff with the Director of Early Literacy. She will be talking about the early learning initiatives. So are we ready?
Ready. Hello,
All right.
Good afternoon. I am so honored to be here with you all this afternoon. I might be a new face to some of you. I joined KDE July 1st, so I wanted to do a quick introduction so that you know me. I have spent the last 21 years of my life in education. I was a teacher, assistant principal, and then for the last 8 years, instructional supervisor for the Monroe County School District, if you're familiar with where that is located. I also have a personal deep respect for superintendents as I'm married to one. I'm married to Kirk Biggerstaff, the Cumberland County Superintendent. So education is at our dinner table most every night. It has been our life. We have 3 children together who are also in the school system as well. So that is a little bit about me. I joined KDE July 1st, as I said, and I've been so excited about this work. I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk to you about the Reading Academies and Senate Bill 9, and I hope that you are familiar with some of that. Maybe I can teach you something new today, but I'm going to start with a guiding question that I'm going to come back to at the end of my presentation today to kind of get your feedback and get any questions on that you might have. If you see me wiping my eyes on a personal note, I'm surrounded by hay fields today and my allergies are going crazy. Although this whole bill makes me so excited that I can cry about it, happy tears, but that's not what's going on. So to get to my guiding question, how might we support districts to engage in a systemic approach to the Kentucky Reading Academies to address student outcomes in reading? So before I get, Natasha, if you could go to the next slide, into some of the particulars, I want to start with the why. Why this come about, why Senate Bill 9 and Read to Succeed. And as you can see on your screen, we have the Kentucky K-Prep proficiency results back to 2015. And we got the percentages of proficient and distinguished for our students for those years. And this is all 3rd grade, as I said. And as you can see, around 50% of the kids in Kentucky are proficient readers in 3rd grade. Of course, COVID exacerbated everything, all of our lives, and it did a number on our reading proficiency, as you can see there too. Only 30% in 2021 were reading at a proficient level. This is significant because research and data tells us that if kids are not reading proficiently by 3rd grade, they are likely to have attendance and truancy issues. They're likely to drop out. They're likely to lead into a life of juvenile crime. There's a lot of different and significant factors that get them there. And if they are proficient in reading by 3rd grade, they're likely to have continued success. But what's very important for us to remember, it's not just academic success. Reading proficiently for our kids means success in life. Reading is in everything that we do, everywhere that we go. We want to ensure that our kids have that foundation. Next slide. Going into a little bit of deeper, our subgroups, I wanted you to see these because they always kind of take me aback when I look at these numbers. The total percentage there on the far right column of below proficiency for our subgroups is outstanding. It hurts my heart. For example, Monroe County, as I said, that I was in for the last 20 years, we had a very large population of economically disadvantaged students, as I'm sure many of you do as well. And 55% of those kids are not reading at a proficient level. Students with disabilities and IEP, 65% of those students are not reading. And we have to do something different. Clearly, what we're doing is not working. I don't think anybody on this meeting today would say that they are okay with half of the students in Kentucky reading at proficient and the other half not. I don't think any of us are okay with that. And that's not pointing a finger at you as a school district. It's not pointing a finger at me. It's not really pointing a finger at anyone. This is the evidence that we have, and it is a collective issue. It is a problem. We must do something different. You could go to the next slide. So that's where Senate Bill 9 comes in, the Read to Succeed. It is our chance to do something different in Kentucky. So what it does, the Read to Succeed Act, is it fully funded the Read to Achieve grant. It allows us the opportunity as a state to give professional learning support strategies for the first time in a way that we've never done before. It addresses early intervention and instruction. It introduces reading improvement plans. It extends family and community engagement. And then there is an aspect of teacher certification involved with the Read to Succeed Act too. But I'm only going to talk about a couple of those. And the first one is the early literacy screener assessments. And that really impacts you, superintendents, because by January 1st of 2023, the superintendents shall select at least one reliable and valid or universal screener for K-3 students and one reliable and valid diagnostic assessment for K-3 students that must be given to all of our students. Another important aspect of that is that if you do, when you do pick your universal screener and your diagnostic, the teachers must be trained in how to give those assessments, have some type of training in order to do so. Also, we wanted to try to ease that burden for you, and believe it or not, it took a lot longer than I expected because we felt the weight of this project of recommending universal screeners and diagnostics to you. We wanted to ensure by the letter of the law that they were reliable and valid. So we do have the early literacy screening universal screeners list on our website now for you to view. We suggest that you start with, we have a chart that kind of gives you a broad overview of all those assessments. And then if you click on those, we have what we're calling one-pagers that gives you more detailed information about each and one of those assessments. So those are available. If you go to the Kentucky Department of Education website and you search universal screeners, that page will come up. Our diagnostics list is in our final revision stage, and we hope to get those out in the next couple of weeks. So you should have recommendations from us with each of our universal screener and diagnostics very soon. And there's just a couple of, I don't know if you get the slide or the PowerPoint. If you don't, if you want to reach out to me, I can give you those. But the Senate Bill 9 guidance, it's kind of a timeline document. If you've not seen that, that is a very helpful document that kind of guides you on what you are supposed to implement when it comes to Read to Succeed and when. So check those documents out. And as I said, if you want to reach out to me, I can send you a copy of those as well. So let's talk about the Kentucky Reading Academies, which is another aspect of Read to Succeed. And again, it is our chance to get literacy right in Kentucky. It is high quality, job embedded professional learning for our K-5 teachers and administrators. And what makes them so unique is, number one, and probably one of the most important aspects to a superintendent, they're free. They do not cost anything to you as a district, and it is a very costly professional learning. It's around $1,500 per participant. So that is absolutely free through the Kentucky Reading Academies. My favorite part as an instructional supervisor is it invests in people, not programs. This is going to give your teachers the skill set and the tool set that they need to teach our kids how to read. It's not a program. It's not a scripted curriculum. It's not a one and done, a set and get. It's very comprehensive. It is 2 years of a professional learning series that they go through. And it is not easy. I'm going to be very transparent with you and tell you this is a master's level course that they are going to take. In order to properly teach our kids how to read, it takes more than just 1 or 2 professional learnings. It's going to have to take a class type setup in order to really deeply richly teach our kids how to teach, or teach our teachers, excuse me, how to teach our kids to read. So it is difficult, it's challenging, but what in life isn't that's worth it? If it's going to be worth it, it's going to be difficult. If it was easy, we would all be doing it, right? So it is comprehensive, it's evidence-based, it's proven. It's proven not just in our state, it's proven in other states. You can take this learning, your teachers can take this learning with any grant, any curriculum that you have, any program that you already have that you think is good, and they can implement their learning into this with ease. One thing that I want to tell you about within the 2 years, and as I said, it's set up like a master's course. So it's very much like taking a course online through a university. They have a platform, they watch videos, they complete tasks, there's checks for understanding, there's assessments embedded in. They want to ensure that teachers master this content. And then at the end of each unit, they are involved in a live virtual meeting, as we are currently, with a national presenter to ensure that that learning is taking place. I did my first one a couple of weeks ago, my live virtual with letters, and it was amazing. It was engaging. You participated, the presenters were very knowledgeable, absolutely loved it, and had a lot of great feedback from that first live virtual meeting. I also want to tell you, to kind of ease maybe your concerns and worries as a superintendent, that we do offer a variety of days that teachers can participate in those virtual live meetings. That's during the school day, but we understand and know that substitutes is a problem and an issue. So we also offer evening unit virtual meetings and Saturday virtual meetings. So they're not all just during the school day. And if you want to have teachers to participate in the afternoons, and if they're willing, then they are able to do so. So what is LETTERS? You've heard me talk about it. It's Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. That's what the acronym stands for. It determines what to teach our students on getting them to success. It gives the reasons why some students struggle, and it gives them strategies to help them get over those struggles. But most importantly, it teaches them the how students learn to read. You've got to know the how an engine works in order to fix an engine. You've got to understand the how behind many of the things that we tackle to fix the problems. So that's what LETTERS does in a nutshell. Why are we so excited about it? Again, we've never done anything like this in Kentucky before. Never have we offered a free, very expensive, free professional learning to every K-5 educator and principal before. In my career, now you might have had that opportunity earlier, but in my 21 years, that's never happened. We have over 1,900 educators and administrators and university partners participating. That's exciting too. Our university professors have heard about LETTERS. They've heard talk about it, and they contacted us and said, hey, we would love to partner with you. And they are opting in, and they have to do that at a cost. But they are participating in the reading academies and learning this because it is our dream and our hope that pre-service teachers will have this professional learning opportunity as well. Phase 2 has already started. As I said, phase 1, phase 2 starts next fall. And there's been a source of confusion that I wanted to clear up with this group too, because I think in Kentucky, we do a lot of cohort work. This is not really a cohort. It is, but it isn't. It is in the fact that we are taking groups and participants of teachers through, but it's yearly. It's not, we might open the registration for year 2 early, but that's a yearly cohort. So our next registration will open sometime this school year, and we will try our best to get that information out in multiple different ways to you in newsletters and commissioners' emails. But that next phase 2 will begin in the fall of 2023. I want to tell you, because I said this earlier, but a very specific example, and I don't know that anybody here is connected with Hancock County. I know that other counties and districts in our state purchased letters themselves a year or two ago and have been implementing that. One specific example is Hancock County. Robin Pointer is the assistant superintendent, excuse me, there. And when she saw that we were providing this opportunity to Kentucky teachers, she reached out and was talking about the impact that it's made in her district already. They've been through 1 year of it. They're in year 2 this year. But she had teacher testimonies. She had information. She wanted to be our cheerleader, said, how can I help? Because this opportunity is amazing. And there's been successful implementation in other states as well. Mississippi, according to the NAEP results, Mississippi is the only state in the United States that has significant reading attainment on the NAEP assessment, and they have been doing letters for the last several years. So exciting research and data that backs this opportunity. So that is kind of my information in a nutshell. I want to come back and say, do you have any feedback or information or questions for me that I can help address and clear up?
Floor is open.
If not, I hope that you on the call, if you do not have teachers participating in phase 1, I hope you will really take to heart that this is a great opportunity, and I hope that you can have educators and administrators in your district participate with us in phase 2. I feel like once we get past the first year, you're going to hear more about it. You're going to hear others talk about how letters has impacted their classroom. And I want you to know that I'm here, that I am just a phone call or an email away. If I can answer any questions about any of the things that I presented today, please do not hesitate to contact me.
This is Bigger Staff. We want to take just a second and congratulate you on your new position. And I'm sure I speak for all the superintendents. We're looking forward to working with you in that position. And thank you for giving us the updates on our early learning initiatives. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleased to be here. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we have as our next presenter, Ms. Christina Weider, Director of the Division of Student Success, talking about trauma-informed plans.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep this very brief, but just wanted to take an opportunity to remind you all that each district likely completed a trauma-informed plan that was approved by your local boards last summer in 2021. And each of these plans, it requires you to include strategies for enhancing trauma awareness throughout the school community, conducting an assessment of the school climate, developing trauma-informed discipline policies, and we do have a model policy that's available and developed through partnership with KSBA, and then collaborating with law enforcement for the notification of any students that have been exposed to some type of traumatic event. And as well as providing services and programs designed to reduce the negative impact of trauma, support critical learning, and foster positive and safe school environments for every student. So I'm sure you all have already done all that, but we just wanted to remind you all that even though there's nothing in law that requires this to be updated every year, that this is something that would be a best practice, is to review that. We are very excited that almost all of the districts in the state have at some point over the past few years participated in some training that we have provided through partnership with UK's Center on Trauma and Children to get some training for your school and district leaders on trauma-informed practices, and hopefully they were able to harness that knowledge to be able to help inform the plans that you have at your district. But there's continuing opportunities available for some of that support should you want to have some refreshing training, that sort of thing. But all of this is really designed to be take into account what resources and needs you have at the local level. So it'll be at your discretion at the local level when formatting the goals and procedures for your plans. And so moving on to this next piece, a couple of key things to remember is, each school should have a trauma-informed team. You should have one at the districts, and these are some just basic requirements from the statute. We have some additional resources that are available through my division around training on positive behavior interventions and supports, trauma-informed practices, mindfulness, resiliency, all kinds of things. So happy to provide some more information on that if it's of interest. And then just being mindful of the fact that these trauma-informed teams are to be led by a school counselor or the mental health services provider, and there is state funding to support those roles in each district. We know it's not quite enough always to support one full salary, but hopefully it's getting you a little bit closer to having the staff that you need to support this work. And then again, we encourage you all to think about the existing cross-disciplinary teams that you already have established in your district, and have them work to be part of the school safety and threat assessment teams, as well as these trauma-informed teams. And so that you really are leveraging those relationships that have already been forged in your district to roll out this work. So I'll keep it pretty short. We do have, again, if you haven't seen the trauma-informed tools on our webpage, we have tools related to understanding trauma and traumatic stress, what a trauma-informed school looks like, developing those trauma-informed teams, trauma-informed active shooter drills, the handle with care notification system for when students have been exposed to some type of trauma, having trauma-informed lockdown drills, and then of course a trauma-informed discipline responsive behavior system. So that's all I have to share, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I'll put my email in chat just in case anyone wants to follow up with me at a later time for any training or additional resources.
Chair Atkins, I think you're muted. Chair Atkins, I think you're muted if you're talking to the group. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I have been talking to the group for like the last 5 minutes. So again, I want to thank Ms. Weider for her presentation. And that brings us to the end of our presentations of our Superintendent Advisory Council. Are there any questions, anything that or feedback that we may have we want to share before we ask for an adjournment? If there is none, I want to share one more bit of information that our next Superintendent's Advisory Council meeting will be November 16th, and there will be an in-person option in the KDE boardroom at the headquarters, KDE headquarters over in Frankfurt. I'm sorry, I just kind of lost that, but there will also be a virtual option. So we'd love to see everyone come out in person and get a chance to have some good discussion here. Not saying we haven't today. I felt like we've gathered a lot of information and had several questions and shared some great ideas with each other. But with all that being said, we need a motion to adjourn.
Lenny Whalen, so moved. Motion to adjourn.
Second, Carrie Ballinger.
Guys, we are in adjournment. Thank you very much for your participation.